Look, guys, Anderson Xavier, 7965, just sent this here. Do you think that if Germany had held out for another 6 months, the United States would have dropped an atomic bomb on Germany?
Anderson, to answer that for you simply, I can answer with one word.
Yes, yes. They would drop the atomic bomb on Germany, yes.
Because it was proposed for that purpose. It was created specifically for that purpose. And the proponents of the Manhattan Project brought this petition to the government precisely for that purpose.
So, yeah, the concern was about the fact that the Germans were developing, potentially, their own atomic bomb.
It started to fall apart around 1942 with the first intelligence reports coming from Europe.
However, only later, around the end of 1943, I would say November, December of 1943, when Niels Bohr, the great Danish scientist, Nobel Prize winner, one of the greatest physicists of the 20th century, arrived, right? He escaped from Copenhagen, finally, was taken by the British to London, and later was taken to the United States and to Los Alamos.
Niels Bohr then arrived in Los Alamos at the end of 1943, and he told Robert Oppenheimer and also Hans Bethe that the Germans were pursuing heavy water as a moderator. And then, because of that, Oppenheimer and Bethe put two and two together and realized that the Germans had ignored graphite. They had essentially taken the wrong path to build an atomic bomb.
Therefore, there was clearly no longer a threat of an atomic bomb being dropped. Sorry, of an atomic bomb being developed by the Germans. However, General Groves, Leslie Groves, decided that it would be more prudent to send a military mission to Europe to be able to make sure that the Germans really weren't developing an atomic bomb at the same pace as the Americans. So the Alsos mission was created. The Alsos mission. It was led by Colonel Boris Pash. And Colonel Boris Pash was sent to Europe there even before Niels Bohr arrived. Even before Niels Bohr was in the United States, he went to Europe.
He landed in Italy initially, and he went to Sapienza University in Rome to look for, some indications of what the Germans might be doing. And after that, Boris Pash went to Normandy, and from Normandy, he followed the front line all the way to Paris. There in Paris, he managed to capture Frederic Joliot-Curie, who was the son-in-law of the late Marie Curie. So Frederic Joliot confessed to Colonel Pash that the Germans had proposed that he complete of the cyclotron that Joliot was building in Paris.
And that the main person responsible for all of this would be Dr. Kurt Diebner, a German physicist who worked as a consultant for the nuclear project at the Reich's Weapons Office. Very well, then. After that, Pash went ahead and then sought out the office of another physicist named Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker, which was located in the city of Strasbourg, on the border with France. Until the end of the war, the Germans, then, were not able to make much progress in the project. They were almost able to make their nuclear reactor work. In April 1945, when Heisenberg, Werner Heisenberg, was captured by the Alsos mission.
But yeah, we know that the American atomic bomb itself wasn't ready during that period, right?
It was only ready on July 16, 1945, when it was actually tested out in the New Mexico desert, right at Trinity. By the way, you can visit it with us this year on our Misao Atomo, If you want to visit these historic sites,
If you're passionate about the history of the development of the atomic bomb, you can come with us. Here, take a look at some footage from last year's expedition. The people there in Los Alamos, the people at the Trinity test site, and also in Dallas, where we fly on the Boeing B-29 Superfortress from the CAF, right, the Commemorative Air Force. If you're interested in joining us on this fantastic expedition, which heads to the United States in October, just click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. Because, my friend, spots are limited, and we already have a lot of people signed up for this expedition, okay? So hurry up to secure your spot. But let's make a quick aside here. But what if Germany had resisted for more than 6 months, like Anderson Xavier here mentioned to us? If Germany had resisted for more than 6 months, and this was actually considered, okay? How was it considered? As for the Ludendorff Bridge in Remagen, here, look, I'll pull up the map for you. And the Ludendorff Bridge in Remagen, which is right here, look, on the Rhine River. Do you see the Rhine River? This big river, look, that will cut across all of Germany from north to south, okay? So here in Remagen, where's Remagen? It's here in this region, I'm sure, because I was right nearby. So the Ludendorff Bridge, man, was the only bridge that was captured intact. The Ludendorff by the Allies. And that added here, look, that added here where the bridge used to be. The old bridge was here. Yeah, look here at its remains, right here. So the old bridge meant progress, a saving of time. Priceless, right? Saving time was invaluable for the Allied campaign. Why? Once the Allies managed to hold the Ludendorff Bridge and build other bridges around it here and get the troops across, long before the entire axis of the Allied attack shifted to this region, here south of Bonn, and that made it possible to open a double front and to advance against Germany here from the north with Montgomery and here from the south with General Omar Bradley, who made a double envelopment here. Look, a double envelopment of this region that you can see here. Look, this region of Dortmund, Essen, Oberhausen, Dusseldorf, which is considered the industrial area of the Ruhr Valley. Here, look, is where most of the armaments industries of Germany are located in the west of the country. And this area was quickly surrounded after the river was crossed. Okay, after the river was crossed. Now, imagine if that didn't happen. If the Germans managed to blow up all the bridges here, look, on the Rhine, and with the army in a defensive position here, look, they could hold off Montgomery's attempts and the American attempts to cross the river. Not out of desperation. With their positions secured. This was a scenario that was thoroughly analyzed at that same time, okay? So the projections for an advance into the heart of Germany, right? Particularly against Berlin. Look at the distance. They said the war would easily last until the summer of 1945. Okay? So summer. What do we mean by that? June, July, and August of 1945. August 1945. What happened in Japan? The first bomb was dropped there in Hiroshima. So, man, when I say that, when I say yes, when I said I would answer simply by saying yes, that bomb would have been dropped on Germany. It's because for sure, man, for sure, that's what everyone was aiming for there. The guy who proposed the idea of using the atomic bomb against Germany to the White House was Leo Szilard. Leo Szilard was a Hungarian Jew who lived in Germany, a refugee in the United States who had intense hatred for the Germans and Hitler. So once Germany surrendered in May, man, do you know what Leo Szilard did? Leo Szilard started circulating a petition so that the atomic bomb wouldn't be dropped on Japan because he thought it was excessive. But he had no qualms about dropping that bomb on Germany. You see, so Leo Szilard's moral standards were basically regional, right? Basically based on nationality. While it's perfectly acceptable to drop an atomic bomb on a German city, it's condemnable to drop an atomic bomb on a Japanese city. Who else thought like that? Some other scientists. Why? There's a spectrum there, right? It's not just like those who want to drop the bomb on Japan and those who don't want to drop the bomb on Japan. Actually, there was a group of enthusiasts who wanted to drop the bomb on Germany and another group who weren't very enthusiastic about using the bomb elsewhere. Not very enthusiastic. There are guys like Szilard who say not to drop it, okay? So a lot of people, man, when Germany surrendered, many of the Jewish scientists, in fact, when Germany surrendered in May, they abandoned the project and said, "This is no longer useful. I'm out. I'm leaving." And then the project had to continue by force, right? Oppenheimer had to hold things together. You know, keep the herd from breaking out. Keep the corral closed so they could finish the bomb as soon as possible. And then Oppenheimer himself. Man, when you talk about it today, you say, man, Oppenheimer regretted dropping the bomb on Japan, right? Man, Oppenheimer is a humanist. There's a book I just finished reading. It's The Making of the Atomic Bomb by Richard Rhodes. It's the Bible of the atomic bomb. And in it, there's a chapter called The Evils of This Time. And in that chapter, it discusses how Robert Oppenheimer, as the director at Los Alamos, was put in charge of conducting a study on the impossibility, let's say the unfeasibility, of building an atomic explosive device. What would be done with that highly radioactive material that was produced there? In what way, what use could they make of that highly radioactive material against the enemy? And Oppenheimer then proposed poisoning Germany's water sources here in this Rhine River basin with these highly radioactive materials. And then Oppenheimer calculated that this poisoning would result in the death of approximately 500,000 people. And in this area here, in the Rhine Valley, people who lived here had a high chance of working for the arms industry, right? For families living here in Essen, Dortmund, all these cities, Gelsenkirchen, the chances of someone working for the arms industry were very high. So the loss to the arms industry from the deaths of these 500,000 people was very big, potentially very big. We're talking about 500,000 people, not 500,000 workers, okay? 500,000 people. That includes elderly people, women, and children. Oppenheimer signed this report about using highly radioactive material to poison these water sources in Germany, right? He signed it. He signed it. And he signed it without any moral qualms because the target was in Germany. Do you understand? So yes, it's quite possible that the atomic bomb, if the front line hadn't progressed the way it did in 1945, would have been used against the Germans. Basically, everyone who proposed the use of the atomic bomb in the first place, and convinced the government to fund the extremely expensive project had that goal in mind. Okay. So let's suppose that Germany in August 1945 is still resisting. And resisting in the same way, right? Like it resisted in April 1945. Let's move forward, right? That is, with a narrow strip of land here, from north to south, being squeezed between the Allied fronts here in the west and the Soviet front here in the east, okay? And let's remember this. All this area you're seeing here, which is the heart of the Czech Republic, was the area that in the end remained under German control at the time of surrender, okay? And then you ask me, so where was the atomic bomb going to fall, man? Where was it going to fall? I have strong suspicions. And I would tell you that Berlin isn't where I suspect it would have fallen. Because Berlin is the capital of the Reich, it's the city that houses the government. It's the city with the greatest historical significance for Germany. So I think it would be spared as a secondary target. Since the industrial targets could already be, at least partially in the hands of the Allies. Here in the West, and taking into account what our own timeline has shown, I think the target would be this right here, huh? You see here Wrocław in Poland, right? So why would they bomb Poland? Because this was Germany at the time, man. This was Silesia. So Wrocław at the time was called Breslau, a German city. And more, it wasn't just Breslau. It was Festung Breslau, Fortress Breslau. Why? Because Hitler had declared the city a fortress. It was not supposed to surrender. And more, Breslau, in our timeline, held out longer than Berlin. Berlin surrendered on May 2, 1945, while Breslau kept fighting. So in this alternate timeline, I believe it's very possible that Breslau would act the same way. And besides, Breslau was on the Soviet front line, with the Soviets approaching. So it would serve the purpose, the dual purpose, of leading the Germans to surrender and also demonstrating the power of the United States to the Soviet Union. Right. So that's my answer. That's what I think about this possibility. If Germany had lasted another 6 months, would it have gotten an atomic bomb? Yes or no? I believe so. If you like that answer and want to learn even more about military history, you can buy my book, O Atomo como Arma, which will teach you everything about the creation, development, and use of atomic bombs in World War II. It's for sale at the WeClap store through the link in the description and also by the QR code on the screen. And if you want this book autographed with a dedication for you, just send an email to saladeguerra@gmail.com with your zip code so I can use it to calculate the shipping cost.